Great news. We got our public release clearance. Just barely got it. But we do have clearance to release this episode to the public. Which means two things. One, somewhere, somebody in legal is very uncomfortable right now. And two, we're officially cleared to say just enough to be dangerous. Welcome to the GovCon show. This is the only place where federal acquisition meets reality. And occasionally loses. I'm your host, Tim Magnuson, contracting professional, compliance strategist, and author. And someone who's voluntarily read the FAR. Now, before we go any further, let's get something straight. This show is not the NPR of government contracting. This is not a show where we're softly whisper about procurement policy while smooth jazz plays in the background, and someone else is gently reflecting on the emotional journey of FAR Part 15. No, that's not this show. If that's what you're looking for, you're in the wrong conference room. What this show is, this is the show where we talk about what government contracting actually is. It's messy, it's complicated, and occasionally it's absurd. And sometimes it is downright hilarious. This is the GovCon show, and if you've ever been asked to just put together a quick subcontract, you already know why this show exists.
This broadcast has been cleared for public release, but just barely.
Broadcasting from deep inside the federal acquisition labyrinth, this is the GovCon show. This show is for acquisition pros, wannabe pros, and procurement insiders who need a place to unpack the chaos. We speak fluent contracting and sarcasm. No clearance required. This is the GovCon show. And away we go!
All right, let's start with the obvious question. Why does this show exist? Why another GovCon podcast? Well, because most of the ones out there, to me, sound like they're afraid of their own redactions. Let me explain something. Government contracting is one of the largest economic systems in the world. Hundreds of billions of dollars is spent every year to buy aircraft, missiles, ships, cyber warfare, software, space vehicles. And yet, almost nobody outside the industry understands it. Well, and if we're being honest, sometimes the people inside the industry don't really fully understand it either. Because what people think this job is and what it actually is are two completely different things. What do people think? Well, they think it's structured, it's logical, clean. What it actually is, it's a 163-page subcontract with 4 departments within the company arguing over one clause. And then someone quietly asking, do we actually have documentation for this? It's that gap between perception and reality where this show lives. All right, so let's drop the polite version, because on paper, this job makes you the adult in the room, right? You are the contracts professional. You bring logic into their chaos. That's the theory. But in reality, it's adult daycare. You walk into a meeting and realize this isn't about the contract. It's about the personalities. Who wants control? Who's already made some promises? Who doesn't want to lose? And now, you're not the adult. You're the referee. So you navigate. You're constantly navigating. You balance what the PM wants with what finance will tolerate, what legal's afraid of, and what the rules will actually allow you to do. And none of those things ever line up. So the best you can do is find the middle, right? Not the perfect answer, not the survivable answer, Well, I take that back. It is the survivable answer. But just when you get good at that, just when you figured out the politics, that's when everybody turns to you and says, okay, contracts, what's the right answer? And suddenly you're expected to be the adult in the room again. And you know, you don't get to choose what version of your job you're playing. It changes. It changes mid-meeting. And through all that, you're doing one thing constantly. You're trying to protect your own reputation. Because every decision, every recommendation, every time you say yes or no, it follows you. That's the real job. Now let's talk about what really makes this job hard. It's the people. It's the people. Are you surprised? Are you surprised it's not the technical aspects of the job that want to make you jump out of the third floor office window? It's not the mounds and mounds of regulations that you have to comply with. It's not even the politics that makes the job difficult and makes you want to jump out the window. It's the people. Let's start with the program manager. The one that they believe time is flexible, budgets are negotiable, and contracts are simply suggestions. You know, can we just move forward and figure it out later? No, we cannot. Because figure it out later becomes explain this to me later. And guess who gets to do that? Yeah, then there's finance. As a former CFO, I have no problem giving you the down low on what finance's focus is. Finance doesn't care what the contract says. What they care about is what do the numbers say. And they want to make sure they've got to make sure everything is tracked to the right charge number. And that all the costs that go into the system are both allocable and allowable. And you're stuck explaining, but we can't just ignore the clause. And they're thinking, but what if we did? And then there are legal buddies, right? And these are two groups. Typically, there's two groups of our legal friends, right? One is the guys that often resents contracting professionals because they feel like we should have had to incur the expense of law school just like they did. And because we didn't, they rationalize that somehow it was because of our limited brain power. But then the second group of our attorney friends are those that naturally respect the contracting profession, right? Those are the people that always try to work with contracts, before an issue becomes a problem. But for the most part, legal routinely imagines the worst case scenario. But that's what they get paid for. That's what they do for a living. You bring them a deal, they bring you what feels like a catastrophe. And suddenly your 10-page agreement is now 47 pages of trust issues. Then there's leadership, right? Just get it done. No details, no guidance, just make it happen. And when you raise the issue of risk, you get the look that says, hey, I heard you, but I'm not going to listen to you. And then there you are, sitting in the middle of all of it, trying to keep it moving, trying to keep it compliant, and not lose your mind, because when it works, nobody notices. But when it doesn't work, you're back in the room. And let's talk about how it all goes sideways. And this is where it all comes together, right? Because nothing fails immediately. It always starts small. A comment, a shortcut, a decision that makes sense at the time, right? And then somebody will say, well, we already told the customer. And by now, you're not negotiating anything. You're fixing. You're in Mr. Fix-It mode. Or they'll say, can you just do a quick agreement? which translates to, we've already started work and now we need you to make it look official. Or my favorite is the meeting after the meeting, where decisions get undone by people who didn't even speak up the first go around. Or the documentation gap. Everything made sense, but nobody wrote it down. And now you're stuck defending a memory. Or the last minute fire drill. Need this ASAP, and suddenly someone else's urgency has become your responsibility. And here's the common thread in all of that. None of these started as bad decisions. They all started as pressure, speed, good intentions. But over time they drift until they land on your desk. And now it's your job to make it work, to make it make sense. And don't even get me started on the difference between dealing with the government and dealing with another contractor. That is not the same job. Those are two completely different ball games. And we'll get into that in another episode. So now the question becomes, how do you survive this? Not just get through it, but survive it. Survive it and enjoy your job. Well, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to recognize you are not the hero of every situation. Just because you can fix it doesn't mean you should own it. Second, document like your career depends on it, because it does. Documentation isn't paperwork. It's protection. Third, learn how to say no without saying no. Let's walk through the implications. You're sending the same message, better outcome. Fourth, pick your battles. Not everything matters equally, but some things. That's where you hold the line. Fifth, protect your reputation, because that's what stays with you. Not the deal, not the meeting, you. And finally, you've got to understand the game. You're not here to eliminate chaos. You're here to manage it. And that's the difference between someone who survives this profession and someone who burns out. And that right there, that's what nobody tells you. They teach you all the rules, but they don't teach you the reality. And that's why this show exists. Because again, this is not the NPR of government contracting. We're not here to make this sound calm. We're here to make it sound real. So if you've ever felt like you're balancing logic and chaos, trying to do the right thing while everything around you is moving faster than it should, you're not alone. You're doing the job. All right, guys, if you've enjoyed this episode of the GovCon Show, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, read the clause, read all the attachments, and try not to stand directly in front of the bus. You might get ran over.
If today's episode sounded a little too familiar, that's probably a sign. Until next time, keep your files tight, your logic tighter. Remember, if your compliance approach is built on checking boxes, you're building risk. We'll see you next time on the GovCon Show.
This broadcast has been cleared for public release, but just barely.